Recording in progress.
All right, call to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Present.
Here.
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 Okay. Before we begin, one of our Board of Finance members asked that you present that chart on the reval, Kevin. So just
Yes.
So one of the questions that came up was looking at the year-over-year increase or past 5 years, every 5 years. we have-
So did you know that there?
So every 5 years, there's a state mandated reval. And as with virtually every community that I have heard from, the reval is quite substantial, the impact to residential properties in particular. So one of the requests that was made from the Board of Finance was to understand how the breakdown works from last revaluation, last value to the current value properties and how that breaks out. So I put a chart together that basically looks at it from those who had a decline, 0.2% of the households, and this is by household number, by value, so it's just pure groupings. And then by 5% increments, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, et cetera, and then 30 plus on the far side. So you can see the largest grouping is in the 20 to 25% increase in household values, followed by 25 to 30%, and then 15 to 20. So between 15 and 30%, you're looking at about 75% of the households, and another 10% or 30% plus. That's really.
I think the important number was 20 and above, because overall it went up 17.7. So the do nothing, if the budget stayed flat, everybody that's over 17.7 is getting an increase no matter what. And then when you start to look at 20, 25, 30, that's a sizable portion of people that, even if we could keep the budget where it was, they're going to get some pretty substantial increases.
That's, that's the thing, that this chart was really important to me because it shows a lot. I pulled the 17.7% out, and all of a sudden we're looking at 75% of the towns getting tax increase. Of that 75%, 65.3% are going to be 2.4 to 7.3 at least. Of that group, 34.5% are going to be 7.4 to 12.3% increase with the 17% out. And the final group, over 10% of the houses in town are going to be over 12.4%. If we do nothing, we don't raise taxes. So this is how far we are behind already. And this is what we have to keep in mind when we're setting our budget for tonight. What's that? Well, you know what? That's only important to the person selling their house. Everybody else doesn't really care their taxes went up.
I just don't know why this is.
Well, what's the surprise part about it was the fact that there was so much disparity between the commercial and the residential that really threw things out of whack, so that there's almost no way to get to that 0 point. So that makes it hard right from the beginning. If the commercial was worth a little more, which, you know, obviously in Connecticut, that's not happening right now. It would have made more of a balance. Plus with that, everybody went crazy after COVID, did enough houses, and unfortunately, it seems like just from quick research in the tax bills from year to year, and then matching them to the new assessments, most of the houses that got hit were in that $300,000 to $400,000 range, were the ones that got hit the hardest. which is the most popular houses for the average middle class family to be trying to get into. So when you look at these numbers, this is the people who are hitting the hardest.
Okay, are there any more comments on this? I mean, bottom line is that people are gonna have to deal with the revaluation along whatever we come up with the budget and so forth. So let's move on. I'd like to, why don't we start with the Board of Education budget? We can start with that, if you like. Go
I,
ahead.
I didn't know if you wanted to address, there were some questions on the blocks that hold down the solar panels from the last meeting,
Okay.
as well as some questions about HVAC. So our facilities director joined tonight. Can probably address it, but he can address the questions.
Yeah, if they prefer addressing us before we start the budget discussion, that's fine too.
Good evening, everyone. How you doing tonight?
Good.
Yeah, there's a few things that came up from the last couple workshops, I believe. The ballast blocks for the solar system. Just shared some information today. Certainly circulate it via email, have it in hard copy if you'd like to see it. We had some of the ballast blocks fail. It's concrete. We talked to the manufacturer today, actually, that they're willing to work with us, but not sure what's going to still be warranted. It's a component of the project. The 1-year warranty from 2017. Certainly since passed, we do have extended warranties on any of the components, but concrete block isn't really spelled out with a warranty document. So luckily it's a local manufacturer. They're willing to work with us, but just don't have any more information at this time other than what was presented to us to replace what was failed. That situation is happening. The other 3 schools also besides Willard. So
Okay.
Working on that. As far as the VCT flooring at the high school, that is the 1950s original section of the school, a slab on grade. What we found was some moisture in that slab, and it's reacting with the bio-based tile. Spoke to the architect of record, willing to work with us also, but we had a moisture reading test done. We had a hygienist there. We have some information related to what's causing this. It's just an action plan to move forward. We don't necessarily have a full scope defined, or a full cost, but magnitude would be substantial due to the fact that it's basically that entire section of building north to south, east to west. It's, encompasses 30–40% of the school. So
Okay.
we're to come on that, but we wanted to identify it and put it in there. It's a little more than a maintenance and repair item. So.
Okay. Okay.
And the other item that came up, I believe, 61 operating and contractual. If there were to be proposed reductions in that, we were tasked this year to keep our increases minimal. We submitted basically a flat budget, our department, from our 2 budgets, our Department 38, Department 61. Use our 5-year average in our 4 primary accounts, operating, contractual, and both 38, 61. Looking at that 5-year spread, we have 10 to 20% contingency, which typically anything we do for a project, we carry a 10 to 20% contingency for the unknowns. Knowing that all the information we received from our distributors, our contractors, everything's going up. Materials, services, hourly rates, fuel surcharges. So the thought was that if we can go in flat this year and utilize the contingencies we've had in the 5 years, offset anything that comes up unexpectedly, we'd utilize that. If there were to be further reductions, we're just concerned that that could impact what we do within the schools for maintenance repair. Anything that comes up that's unbudgeted.
You're
Handle
rambling.
structure, HVAC, electrical door hardware, there's a lot of components to keep the schools going that we would just be concerned if that contingency was to be reduced. So just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention and for consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for,
So the blocks is not a done deal yet. That's just a preliminary estimate right now. So that could run lower. And basically same thing with the water problem in the courtyard.
It's definitely, it's a known condition now, so it's what we do to correct it moving forward.
We have a straight answer about the HVACs yet? The HVAC projects? Do we have an answer?
well, I
Yeah,
can,
what
whatever
time period?
information I got, I can speak to, but.
Okay.
Is Doug, on the HVAC system, are you responsible for that too?
Working in conjunction with Public Works and the Public Building Commission, we're all part of it together along with the Board of Ed Central Office.
Okay, because specific to the one that we got going on Willard right now, I'm being told that it's gonna take a while for that to complete.
Yes.
Because of lead time on, components and whatever. And the only reason why I'm asking is we're trying to bond for the next 2 schools, which is fine, but you know, that's a December 2024 deadline to complete all this, okay? For the grant requirement or whatever. And I don't see that, we're lucky if we're gonna finish the Willard by December 2024. So I'm not inclined to, you know, authorize any kind of bond or approve any kind of bond for the next two schools is my point. We're gonna get it done, it's just a matter of timing.
The sequential plan was always Willard being the oldest and then Griswold and Hubbard at the same time, so we could flip a coin on those. You know, the plan was always a 2-year plan because of the impact. Just we can't do that magnitude of work 8 weeks. So it was always a start in the summer, do this major pack, work second shift throughout the school year, and then finish up the following summer. And then the intent would be to start that Griswold and or Hubbard and or depending on the grant and the funding. The way the state grant, I understand the language that was submitted that December 2024 was substantial completion, but we can show that where we are, and if we need an extension, we can submit that for an extension for consideration. So it didn't sound like it was a hard cutoff. They're gonna stop funding, but whether we would sequentially back to back to back or stretch it out further, a lot of things pending on the state grant response and now the federal DOE grant that we're working with too. So we have a few options. I know it's tough to pin down the numbers right now with what we have, but certainly it's the impact. So
So the plan is summer of 23 to summer of 24.
correct. That's with the construction manager and the PVC right now that's underway for bidding soon. Start this summer, complete next summer. It's just a matter of if funding is in place, we then start eventually with Griswold or Hubbard, or do we defer that a year or two?
Projects, whatever.
All that goes through PVC. They hired the construction.
So they've given the go ahead.
They gave the go ahead on Willard. They're almost. The whole question right now for the other two schools, is grant. We get the grant for them.
And we have to bond in order to get the grant.
Well, we're assuming the grant is not going to cover the full cost. So the balance would have,
We have to do it before.
I would say, at least in conjunction with it, just because you're likely to do a $3 million project.
Yeah,
What I got from Don on building commission was that they have basically they have the things drawn out for Hubbard and Griswold. But it's a matter of, they can't handle those other two projects and this one at the same time. It's just more than they can even get going. But should the grants come through, then we could make adjustments from there. If we get anything, we may not get anything because we're counting on a real long shot, especially $3 million.
correct. Yeah, the construction manager is under contract with the town for Willard.
Look, there's mine, look.
Finalize the plans and specs, go out to
Yeah.
bid. Those
That's
bids come
me right
back.
there.
That was gonna be the basis for what we could expect for the other two schools. So we'll know more, hopefully April or May, the way the timing is. And to your point, yes, the plans and specs are Griswold and Hubbard together, but they haven't been finalized for bidding.
Right.
All the efforts have been focused on Willard, get those on the street as quickly as possible so that we can begin this summer.
What's the process for, you know, so I assume we can do some planning while you're working on it.
I'm not being the construction person or.
Yeah. Again, it's the basis for the other two.
The construction manager was hired to work from this point forward for Willard. But also there was a portion of the contract that was designed to help with finalizing the plans, getting the bids out and understanding the other two schools, but it wasn't full construction management. So that was always the intent, was that they would be working through finalizing the other two while Willard was started.
And just on a side note, as far as, you know, the portable air conditioners that we've had to deploy in the 3 elementary schools, we have about 6 to 8 in Griswold and Hubbard, and we have 16 at Willard. But Willard is the oldest system, in the most impact, obsolete parts no longer available. The impact of, is it cost effective to spend $8,000 repairing a unit that no longer of useful service? So as these projects, the farther they move out, what we can see is the cost would go up. Also the impact of classrooms during that time, what we're able to continue to maintain, try to keep it running. And if we have to use a portable unit, so the timing in that aspect was certainly something that our operations and maintenance funds were to reduce, that could impact keeping these systems going longer. And also the timing of how we bond for the other two schools in relation to where we are with Willard and the grant and the federal grant.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with the bonding as much as the timing, basically, you know what I mean? You know, our PBC person said that you're lucky you're gonna finish the Willard by December 2024. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just struggling with the fact that we're gonna bond as part of this budget.
Part of it seemed to be an issue with whether suppliers could actually deliver the equipment, because there's such a huge demand on what's going on post-COVID.
We do have information from the manufacturers and distributors that the lead times are relative to 6 to 9 to 12 months, depending on what's specifically ordered. Some components are available quicker. Some are more of a build. The chillers, for instance, would be a special build. Those aren't shelf items, where some of the fan coil units, some of the pumps would be more of a stock item. So it does vary, but overall it impacts the project to stretch it out that year.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the intent was first summer, so this summer. Tear out the ceiling, put in the hardware throughout the building. The intent was always the chillers would be next year, which would give the 12-month lead time to do that. So you've got to kind of prep the building for it. And then the components you're buying, like the chiller, you'd have that lead time because that would be summer, second summer. I don't know if that goes.
A little bit, and did I hear you say last meeting, the town council has to action the building?
They would defer, they have to defer or send a project to the.
I just want to make sure we're following the process here. And I know you guys talked with Don Lombardo, but
Well, the
one
council,
guy out of seven.
Well,
building
yeah,
should be directed by the council.
yeah, I mean, the council did send these to the PDC. Council also held a special meeting authorizing the superintendent to submit the grant, so they didn't even just take it up, they actually called a special meeting to authorize going for this grant. Part of the authorization required the bond ordinance, because in order to go for this, one was the state wanted it to be shovel ready. Obviously, December 2024, you need to be essentially shovel ready. But two was they wanted to make sure the communities were prepared to fund the remaining balance after the grant to be considered for the grant. So all of those steps have been completed. You would have seen and approved the $4.9 million bond ordinance. However, if Board of Finance, the council, one or both don't want to move forward borrowing at that point, then we certainly wouldn't do it. Grant or no grant, if you don't want to do it, we won't do it.
We don't have any. We're talking about Willard, we already moving forward on it, so that's the 4.9 million that you're talking about, right?
No, Willard is
You mean
funded by
4.9,
ARPA.
okay,
Willard is funded
Yeah,
by the ARPA
right,
grant.
okay.
This would be for the other two schools.
What's the cost for the Willard right now? Estimated cost?
I guess you can say estimated, so it's hard to say. There's been some placeholders, but until we really get bids back, really estimates. Or older estimates, so we haven't done a current cost analysis.
Rosh?
It's unfortunate we don't have word from the state, but the intent of the program, $150 million, make sure that the schools be able to complete these projects. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say all of the schools will be in the same situation. They will highly likely extend the date from December 24th, for a few months down the line. Speculation, because the idea is not to say, oh, you can't finish it, we're gonna take the money out. Idea is to say, well, you need a few more months, we'll give it to you. Speculation. But it's just a lot of unknowns here, but the whole intent is for the schools to have this money to get the HVAC projects done.
All right, thank you. And
Sure, just for your awareness too, that something that may come back is Willard is the only school left with environmentals as far as ACM floor tile and mastic, really just the mastic. So how the project is impacted by that abatement, whether the town, the Board of Ed do it on their own outside the project or in conjunction with, those details are still getting worked out. Willard is the only remaining, it's just that original section of the school. As far as Griswold and Hubbard, they're clean, so we don't have to worry about that component as far as the projects.
any other questions for Doug? Thank you, thank you. There's somebody else you want us? Okay, okay. Okay, so let's get into the budget. Let's start with the Board of Education budget. I had did have a meeting with the superintendent and the BOE chair last week, just to kind of hear, their point of views or whatever. And then after further discussion with some of our members here, I think that we have a budget position that we want to move forward with. So, I'll start maybe with Jerry to, provide his opinion, and we can we can go down the line if we want to.
Okay. My suggestion is we give them a budget with an increase of 3%, which would give them a budget of $50,555,071.
Any other comments?
I agree with it. I mean, I think it's, we've set our numbers originally. I think that the 3.0 from where we started kind of seems to mesh well. It's less than most folks were expecting, but we're in a different reality right now in this budget.
I think with the adjustments that we've made on other parts of the budget, I can do 3%. I think that's a workable number.
I'm in agreement. I feel the same. It's see where we go from there.
Gonna make a motion of that?
Mark, anything? And based on our discussions or whatever, sure, we all had a little difference of opinion, but in order to what I think could go forward a reasonable, budget, I agree with the 3% also. So Jerry, why don't you make a motion?
Okay, I make a move to send the Board of Education budget of $50,555,071 to the annual budget hearing.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So move. Okay, so the next one, we, on the general government, we were gonna talk a couple items or whatever, so, we want to start with the V&A, question.
So the VNA, the goal approach that we took is to try and do the reductions without having an impact on the revenue line. That otherwise I thought it will be counterproductive to do something like that. So, and I think at the end of the meeting, you asked us to come back to you, the 100, the 200, and the 300. So here's what we have for 100. Get to the first 100. Yeah, you can put it up. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
One is to eliminate home health aid, salary and benefits. Should be, see right on the top there.
I can't see that.
So I'll read it out to you, 65,106. And then eliminate one office staff mid-year. And then, meaning in December, the first year you'll get to 115, year two, you'll get the full impact of salaries and benefits to 166. To get to the 200, you have the health aid. You would need to eliminate one office staff the beginning of the year. And it's 10119 salary and benefits. The remainder we worked out, but to be taken out of PT and other medical services that we provide. Because we still need to have the whole spectrum of services available, but we believe we might be able to strip it away at a time from those services. The third option, I won't, is not my recommendation. I actually propose that we don't do it, but since you asked to get to the 300, in addition to the first two that I talked about, we would have to use a nurse position, which is very counteractive, and it'll definitely impact the revenue line, which I'm certain. So I don't know how much, but it'll be, who knows, so it'll be very difficult to hold that revenue line as well. So those are the three different buckets that you had asked for. So,
Any comments?
Thank you. In the column I, on the eliminate one office staff mid-year, what's the second column?
so that's year two, so
Oh, I didn't see.
Okay, all
Okay,
right.
year
I
two,
didn't-
you'll get the full
Okay.
benefit of that.
I see. Okay.
Work through transitions and some, make sure that people also will have a smoother transition when doing so. So, is that recommendation?
And what's the weapon that helping them?
First two, I believe we can hold it. The third one, I'm uncertain. You look, it's pretty much asking like a restructure or airline and lay off the pilots. You know, just like can't fly the plane. Can, I mean, nurses are the primary category. And we also have a plan in place to hit all the residents, a marketing plan, one-on-one, and send the tax bills out to get the VNA services, let all the residents know that they have, patients' bill of rights and what they can do. Most of the patients, unfortunately, they go to hospitals and they don't get the option to select the Berlin VNA. They get Hartford Hospital or some other entity, and they go their merry way after that. But if every resident, every person knows that as a person living in Berlin, you're coming out of a hospital, you have this option, and it's free. So we want to push that initially in July, and then so every household with it, direct marketing.
What is the responsibility of the PT med services? That position right there, the part-time med
So
service.
occupational therapy, physical therapy, these are hourly, then depending on the patient's needs, we would hire them on an hourly basis. So the risk with that is, if somebody needs that kind of service, and once you take the patient, you sort of have to provide it. Otherwise, at the beginning itself, you have to tell we're not going to take someone because you don't have that particular service. So that could actually line as a result.
Okay,
Speak about it.
sure.
Well, thank you for the three options. This issue has gotten very, very heated over the last couple of our meetings. And, I think in my mind, we need to take a first step at some point here. We've been kicking the can down the road for 5 or 6 years. The deficits have not been getting any smaller. In fact, this year's budget is projected to be larger than the previous year. So my suggestion would be that if we are going to, do something, I know we have a director who feels the pressure of all of this and is trying to put in some new policies and procedures and whatever. Although I was looking for 300,000 in the beginning, I think I would go with Plan 1 myself. I think this is just the first step, though. I mean, I still think deficits of 800,000 for this unit are just way too high, and I think this is going to be a multi-year process to reduce this down. And I think if we do go along with reducing accepting the first option here, that we do need to install some kind of a regular meeting process with the department that also goes along with answering the questions we've had on different metrics, some of which we've gotten answers to, some of which are cloudy, and there may even be new things that, we might need to go forward. And I think part of this is, whether there's clear goals in terms of financial end of it. I'm sure they have all the goals in terms of what the people are supposed to do in providing services, but I think the end of it of financial goals is something obviously that we're more interested in, and the two have to be put together in terms of a successful resolution for this. So I think those are my thoughts in terms of going forward. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
Any other comments?
I mean, I tend to agree with that. I think that there needs to be a really bold strategy moving forward in terms of marketing, business plan, everything. But I think it's probably the best one to go with right now.
I would agree with that. When I first came into this, well, you guys know, I was reluctant to cut it. Because we kept getting the promises, and this is year 4 and it's not getting better. So we're at the point where we have to take a step. So I think that's a good first step.
Okay.
And if we see something in revenue, I'm sure we'll find a way to cover that if they really.
I mean, I think I mentioned it before, but, I was a little surprised that we didn't have some, change to the loss situation for the current proposed budget. So I know we looked at 300, 200, 100, but we don't want to devastate the VNA. We believe it's still it's valuable to our town. So I would agree with the option 1 myself also. So, any other comments?
Yeah, I'm in the same place. I agree with Jerry wholeheartedly. I think, things like metrics, key performance indicators, goals, all along the financial lines. I'm still bothered by the aspects of things that we talk about revenue in the wrong context, I think, like, Arosh, you don't want to impact revenue, but if it's costing you $1.50 for $1, then, that's not, you don't want more revenue, you want less revenue, I'm sorry to say. So to me, it's like really, I would hope personally, Arosh, that you will take some time to work with them and help them develop these financial metrics. I think they know it in spades on the quality assurance measures, whatever, but I think the group could use some help on the financial side to put these metrics together and understand, from here's the activities we do and here's what it costs, we got, $60 in for a speech therapist. Well, what did it cost us to do that? And it's extremely important. And you may reach a conclusion at some point in time that some of these services, maybe we shouldn't offer at all on a wholesale basis. The other part too is I'd really like to understand, and I keep harping on this, I want to understand the outside communities too. It's like if next year I don't have an answer to that as to whether it's actually bringing in more than it's losing, I'm going to have a problem with 24% of your staff being around because I don't know and you don't know. And the fact that bothers me more is that you don't know
What is it that I don't know?
whether that 24% of their clients they're doing on the outside is actually bringing in a net positive result to the town of Berlin.
No, they don't bring a net positive, but they do bring something positive.
What do they bring? They allow you to keep people on the bench.
That's correct. because
Okay.
If you don't, you have nurses and other aides who are sitting there, they're getting paid, not collecting the revenue. So something is better than nothing. But my hope is, I hear from all of you that you want people serving people outside of Berlin. So in order to do that, you got to fill all those seats.
I
people
understand.
in Berlin, you got to transition. And then also there is a Department of Health guidelines. You can't just cut the cord. You got to turn them over. Somebody else should to take those patients. We'll transition all those things. But It's not that we don't know, it's just that we do, but if you don't take those patients, you're going to even have less revenues.
But you sort of cut your own argument some when you talk about people sitting on the bench and taking more in. If you have people sitting on the bench, maybe you have too much staff.
Sitting on the bench, but not at 100% capacity. It's one thing when you're working 80% of your time, take one
Yeah.
person out. It's just one of those things that it's not a
Yeah,
cut.
I don't think we want to rehash the whole thing we've had over and over, but I do recall one of our earlier discussions when we were talking about what would full capacity be for the VNA at the time we were talking, and they were talking about they would like to be able to get to full capacity of 120 in their census. Well, they had 4 nurses at that point. We still have 4 nurses, and our recent census was 49. So I'm missing something, but again, I don't want to redo the whole thing
But I'll
again.
make you a pledge, make you a promise. Have a director here for the first time who knows what's going on and can unpack the numbers. Next year, this time, we are trailing behind. I'll be the one to come up with a plan that will have a different model. You won't have to do that.
That's all we're asking for.
Good.
Fair enough.
All right, so we have a motion.
I make a motion. I don't know the line item numbers. Kevin, you'll be able to take it off of his sheet.
It's eliminating 1 health aide and 1 office staff mid-year.
Okay, I make a motion to eliminate 1 health aide and 1 office staff half year for a total reduction of $115,615 from the VNA budget.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next area I want to talk about, we talked about, some of the professional and technical expense categories. And you had provided us a $300,000 reduction. And after looking at that, I didn't want to, remove any budgets from the library, and Parks and Rec or Public Grounds, so which left a reduction of about $203,000 out of the 300 that you recommended.
I wouldn't say record.
Okay. I take that back. I take that back, that you provided, okay? So in addition to that, I also identified some other items that may have some potential to make up the difference between the 203 and 300. And so I guess I'd like to have discussion on that. And for our members, this is a piece of paper that that I sent to Kevin and
Got it.
I've got hard copies. I didn't include them. This is our latest one.
Okay.
Not much, but.
You want me to go line by line?
No, I mean, I'm just, I gave you a look ahead this morning, so is there anything that you
Well,
want to?
Go ahead.
The first thing I would caution against making any reductions in the garage. And the reason I say that is because the garage, I think of it more as a response department. There's certainly maintenance work that's done there, but they are regularly fixing vehicles that are critically important. For example, police cars, fire vehicles. They have certified folks there. So whether it's Ford certification or others, so professional development keeps them aware of what's going on, keeps them able to deal with the vehicles, and their turn time taking a police vehicle that's off the road and getting it back on, a fire vehicle and others back on is much faster than if we have to go outside at a lower cost.
Yes,
We kind of, when Arosh and I sat, we kind of said, that didn't, we don't think that would be. a-
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, all I did was look at prior year actuals. I looked at where you are in actual
Understood.
encumbrances this year. I don't have the complete judgment to really say, so I prefer your opinion, you
I
know,
know.
with respect to that. And as a matter of fact, you can just tell me where you think you can do something rather than address every single one. Or you can't do anything, you know, tell me that too, but
Tell me to.
No, I mean, whatever you.
So again, I mean, we can go line by line, but I don't think that's productive. And, you know, Kevin and I talked about this, you know, certain things like it's not visible to the community, but I consider staff training and professional development vital, critical. You know, otherwise you're going to be stuck in the mud, not knowing what's going on in your environment. So just little, you know, few $100 there and cutting it in other places really is not going to do any good. So you asked me to get to the 96.5, right? 96.5 from the proposed 204 we gave you. So I'll again, not my recommendation. I'm just giving it to you since you asked. The 50,000 way at the bottom that you have for school expenses and operating materials, there's a 50 and a 30, that's 80 at the bottom.
Mhm.
And the remainder, we would take it out of a postage of 16.5. That'll get you to 96.5.
Yeah, I mean, the only other comments I'll make, I started with the garage. I would caution not to do anything with registrars. The state just passed a constitutional amendment for early voting. Some bills just came out of committee straight to the floor that would talk about 10 to 14 days. And actually one of them has additional days for everything, including a referendum. There's a real unknown around registrars, town clerk, and how implementing that. There's been an advantage to say that the town has saved some money there. These are the folks who work at the polls when you go in and vote. We'd be fortunate to pass the budget or shot each time, but the charter also calls for a second vote. So to have early voting, presidential primary, and the new constitutional amendment, I would caution against taking anything out of there. I think there's actually risk of what we brought forward. The other I would caution against tax refunds. In a year of reval, we typically see higher levels because you have an opportunity with motor vehicles to come back in the fall to the BAA. And then, of course, there's those who go through the BAA process and are not satisfied, are able to avail themselves of the courts. So we can end up there. I would caution against both of those. I would say from a tax refund, even if you cut it, if there's a refund due, we owe it back. We can't say to someone, we don't have it in the budget, we're not giving you your money back. And you know, the only other one I would point out is human resources. We were fortunate enough to have a shared resource for many years, but stretched extremely thin between the town and Board of Ed. We're now in our first year of having a dedicated human resources person, and that has played a huge advantage across a number of areas. I think any reduction there would be a disservice townwide.
I mean, based on what Roche just stated, he's not touching any of these anyway, so. So again, you know, all I really did was try to look at, you know, how we did the prior years, you know, and where we stand today, so. You know, I'll agree with Roche's recommendation, you know, on where to take it out. From my perspective. Now, we're just trying to find ways that, you know, can, you know, help us and, not really impact you guys, you know, that much, so. I'm okay with the items that Roche mentioned to come up with the 93.5 gap
Where's the 13 coming from?
in postage.
16.5 from that.
At the end of the day, does it matter? Because if you overrun one and underrun another, aren't you going to go back to the end of the year and say, I want to move it here to here?
If we do, and the more you cut, the less likely there's having those deaths. And that I think, you know, Doug raised that point when he spoke. The one issue you have is there could be potentially things that we just don't do In other words, if something breaks in a school, Doug and his team are going to fix it. We're not gonna let him go. But if there's a project and we say, listen, it's gonna cost about 30 to 40,000, and there's 20 left in the account because we cut 50,000, then we're not going to come back to you and say, okay, at the end of the year, we ran over. We wouldn't intentionally do a discretionary project. It would be things that needed to be done. So the critical pieces won't be, but there are discretionary things that are still valuable, and that's not excluded by other things that we don't necessarily have to do for, say, safety, but they are beneficial. Those may get taken.
Thanks for raising your hand, Doug.
Sorry again, I just want to highlight one area that I think I forgot to mention earlier. What we did find within the 5 years is coming out of COVID, during COVID, is we weren't able to purchase materials we couldn't get. We weren't able to spend services on contractual work that we couldn't get people to work. So I feel that 5-year average may be a little skewed in that manner, that had we not gone through COVID, there could have been more PM work done, more project work. Wouldn't have had the backlog of materials, door hardware, a lot of the items that we just couldn't really get and get people to do in conjunction of the normal operation of a school year. So that's really my only feeling on that. You look at the numbers, there's always a contingency we try to keep. The high school budget was first established after it was turned over to the town for many unknowns. That was 2017, 18. So now that we know kind of what we have to do contractually, what we could expect to see, the unknowns, but also getting caught up with the schools. It's very hard to not know everything that's going to break, when it's going to break, and what we continue to do through operations and maintenance now that the capital threshold has been increased.
That's just,
Just for consideration, that's all, and we appreciate.
so the, just one question, the two items that, first two items that Roche mentioned, the operating manuals and the contractual services for Department 3561. You have encumbrances already in place there. Do those cover the remainder of the year?
Typically, at the start of the fiscal year, the majority of our encumbrances will go out for contracted services, fire, sprinkler, et cetera. And throughout the year, it's more PM work, maintenance, repair items that come up. But that's, this always in turn for, well, the end of the fiscal year is where we really know where we stand with capital, what we expect to see for funding proposed in the budget, any capital projects that shift the maintenance and repair or end of the year. So we're able to do that a lot of times, and then things that come up during the year that weren't identified at the start of the school year. So we have certainly seen some challenges, and I think that 5-year average is a little skewed based on that we weren't able to do with the buildings over the last 3 years because of procurement,
Understand.
labor, et cetera. So, and then all the price increases that we have been formally notified of, that 20 to 30% you expect to see in the years to come, or at least next year, that surplus usually covers that with our town contingency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I agree with Roche's plan. I think we should stay away from the garage and reserve votes and the collector of revenue. You just break the microphone. You gotta pay for that too. Yeah, Roche's plan.
Any other comments from you? Do we want to make a motion, Jerry, on the,
Well, I'm not sure how to phrase that, or. So according to this worksheet, it's everything at the top here.
I listed them up here. I believe these are. the items.
everything in the. Let's,
So you have everything through P and Z tablets would be your top portion. And then
Okay.
adding in the postage of 16.5, school operating materials 30.
Okay,
So it's 300,000 of additional town operational and operating cuts, I guess.
okay. I'll make a motion to reduce various items totaling $300,000, starting with the finance computer support down to the school contractual services of 50,000
Yeah, operating material.
and operating materials.
a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Thank you on that. Thank you. Want to mention the animal control?
just,
I guess the question is on animal control, you're gonna uh, you're gonna convert a part-time to a full-time position. So could you,
Yeah, I mean, we just passed a lease ordinance and Mr. Grady especially was one of my favorite folks to complain that we have so many people out there not following the leash ordinance and running around and and the part of the problem that we have is the full-time animal control officer works Monday through Friday and the part-time works, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're trying to get staggered shifts so that they could work after hours and have more flexibility. So hence we move the part-time, the 1.5 to 2 FTE. That's a proposed plan, and I hope with that we can, try to get this under control, especially we're just starting this. Town has never had a leash ordinance and we want people to comply. We need to be out there, giving citations and tickets and warnings and all of the other stuff. That's the plan.
well, quite honestly, I wouldn't do it this year because it's not that critical. I don't see there's gonna be much of an improvement. Part-time girl is there on the weekends. She gets out and walks around. Full-time person is never there. So,
If you want to take it out, but don't say there won't be an improvement. That's what we are trying to do
Well,
here.
I don't think there's gonna be enough of an improvement to justify the cost is what I'm saying. I'll stick with that.
Okay.
But there's not gonna be enough of an improvement to justify the extra cost. The weekends are the busiest part. That's when it has to be monitored the closest. That's when the dogs are running off leash, so
So the
at that point, if the part-time person is handling weekends, then we should have that part covered fairly well, because it's just not that busy during the week.
we'll have weekends and evening coverage.
Okay,
The
so
part-time
that's,
person going full time. I mean, one of the complaints that I hear, most of the folks after work take their dogs out for a walk late in the evening, and that's not covered. People leave at 4:30. The second person will be able to have more coverage in the evenings, and the weekends as well.
I see the biggest problem on weekends. That's just my personal opinion. I wouldn't, this year, I would not do that in the budget this year.
any other comments? Well, let's make a motion.
Make a motion to reduce animal control part-time position by $68,000.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Yeah, so,
I'm sorry, Jerry, what was that?
Aye.
60,000?
All I have is 68,000. I don't have the
That
particular.
was my guess, what I mean, I don't know what fringes and all that stuff. All right, so, next area, I did recommend in order, because we're, trying to work through this budget, this year and the reval, is to take the closed pension plan and fund the closed pension plan, both the annuity and the lump sum out of fund balance, like we have in the past. So that we already agreed to 172,000, which was the annuity. The total, including the lump sum, is 743,000. So I'm recommending that we apply fund balance to that, like we have in the past.
I've got no problem with that. I mean, we set that process up quite a while back, so. Just continues, what we've been doing with the old plan. Can we make a motion? Make a motion. Oh, I don't know the difference between those two. Okay, I make a motion to reduce the townwide pension line by 571,000. Well, no, I'm sorry, I don't do that. That stays in place. I'd make a motion to increase fund balance by 571,000 in the revenue section of the budget.
For a second? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
So moved. The other areas, we talked about the HVAC systems and the PD, mm, what Kevin did was, what we did last time said, we took the principal out because it won't happen until the end of the fiscal year. The question is, how much we're gonna bond, if any, for these projects. So the question is, the interest aspect of the bonding. So, I'm still not convinced that the HVAC systems, I know that you're looking for a grant, okay, for those, for the other two schools while we work Willard, but I'm still not convinced that the schedule is even achievable, close to being achievable. It's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think I'm of a little different view there. With the bonding, we're gonna need to move quick if the grant stuff does come through, and we do still have another opportunity here. We could adopt this budget to go to the town hearing. And we really have all the way through to when the council looks at the budget. The council could always cut it out. So we still have an opportunity here to play both sides, I think, with the grant application and coming through. So and certainly through the time of the hearing, which gives us another week, and then again after that it goes to the council. So council can't add it back, if the stuff does come through. So in my mind, we've already put the principal off for certain. If we don't do the bonding, we won't, yes, it'll impact the mill rate, but I think the impact of this is what, 310,000, which is probably a 0.11 or 1.2 on the mill rate. It's not, I'm not saying it's nothing, but I'm saying it's a pretty small character, and there's still an opportunity for us to drop it out if we know, say, within the next month. And I mean, a lot of the, if they were supposed to tell us by March 1st, you'd think they'd be able to tell us by April 1st, I don't know. But the opportunity is still there to cut it later.
Yeah.
I would say play it.
Yeah, as long as the council got the ability to cut it when the time comes, there's no sense in not taking it.
Yep.
Right, so, but the bonding was also the police.
All three.
Also, which was the biggest piece of the bond.
Yep.
And, so we specific to the HVAC.
No, we had dropped out all of the principal before already. So I would leave all the interest in. The difference between the 930 and the 620 is the
110.
310. So I'd leave all the interest in there. Because we've already taken an action on the 620 somewhere in there.
You did that last week.
Yeah, and I think that was a good move, not knowing whether we're gonna actually take the money right away, and we had that flexibility within how we structure the debt. The debt repayments. Kevin had a good idea there, pushing it off to
I agreed with you.
well, it's got to be a good idea then.
Great idea.
Okay, but, on the police station, we have no clue on what that value is yet, right? I mean, you started with a $5.5 million number, and now that scope is changing drastically from what I understand. I mean, it's changing enough that's not gonna be 5.5. I'm hearing $3 to $3.5 million for this project. So you're asking to bond $4 million on the police station when the starting point is
Well, in
overstated.
fairness, the ask was for the project. The project now is significantly smaller. The 5.5 was different project.
I understand that. I didn't, no, I understand that, but I'm just putting in perspective of what we're,
Are you suggesting that we reduce the interest amount because the principal amount of the project will be smaller?
We have a number from PBC.
what we, I mean, I'm hearing 3 million, but I don't think that's firm, you know what I'm saying,
I
Rush?
think that's realistic.
The number was.
Is there a timeline from the Public Building Commission to you guys for the project number?
The timing that I've been told to go out is still the same. They basically continue down the path, just stripped out a large portion of it, which would mean going to bid in May, open and award in June and try to begin in July. And we are still going down that same timeline as far as clearing out the space and having to be ready for the start. Because the space that we've been clearing out, so essentially what is currently the Board of Ed storage area, remains in focus. Sally Ports, the locker rooms. Essentially, if you went straight below us, that area, 3 floors below us, that area would become the area.
If you look, remember the presentation we had on the police station?
I remember the $6 million.
There's foldouts in there. They actually show the diagrams of what was gonna be done. If you look at phase 1, that's essentially what we're doing to the station now, which is probably 75% of what they actually needed.
And so you want to take it out, then this, you don't want to bond it, you want.
No, I don't have a problem bonding. The
The
value is
numbers are too high.
overstated, that's all.
The numbers are too high, that's
By
why.
a couple
The-
million
the in-
dollars.
The interest values.
So make an adjustment for,
Well, I mean, knowing the new one.
So if, let's say it's 4 million. Let's say it's 4
I
million.
mean, if the difference is $1.5 million.
Yeah.
At 5% interest is $75,000. Well, I mean, those are.
Yeah.
if-
Right now, you have 195,300 in the budget for the project. So I'm not sure. What are we gonna do? Take 25,000 off or 60,000 out, It's a pretty small number, whatever it is. It's 195,300. This is on interest payments on the town side, not the Board of Ed.
It
Yeah.
continues to be an option. Council, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
They don't have to necessarily eliminate a line. They can also use the line. They have the right to.
Yeah, and maybe by then they'll have some more feedback as to the total amount of the project or
I'm
something.
supposed to be getting these numbers any day.
It was any day the last 3 months.
Yeah, I know. Any day around here seems to be all 6.
Maybe we just let it roll and let them take care of it.
all right,
Yep.
well, based on this discussion, I don't have a problem that we just hold the position that we had and leave the, leave the, interest out. No, the principal,
Leave the interest in.
leave the interest in. Okay. So we already had approved the, taking out the principal, so we're
Mhm.
all good. Okay. So the only, other area, because I'm looking, you know what I mean, Roche? I'm asking, can you reduce your townwide expenses contingency from 300 to 150?
That's paid for with an appropriation of fund balance. There's actually no impact of taxes for that.
Oh.
That was already
That's right.
embedded in the vote.
Okay.
We always
All
appropriate.
right,
fund
so
balance.
we're, okay, so we're good. Okay, sorry. All right, with that, unless there's any other items that we want to talk about, I think we covered, pretty much everything that we needed to cover.
So now you just need to take a vote on the
Oh.
general government budget and on the water control budget.
So, I have to interject, I mean, last time we had some discussions about after we heard the testimony or whatever you want to call it about the playgrounds and so forth, did we want to include?
If we talk about that, can we talk about that after we sell these numbers and
What I thought was on the playgrounds, the one that, became kind of the highest priority was the Little People's
Mhm.
Playground. Sorry about that.
Yep.
And what I like to do is not have it part of this budget, but also look at whatever surplus we have in the current year, how we could apply some of that surplus towards,
Yeah.
get a little more information on Little People's Playground. And then have some surplus available to accommodate the Little People's Playground as part of whatever surplus we may have under the current.
the full cost of the playground?
An estimate, you
Yeah.
know.
And that's
some
actually,
Sort of,
I'm okay with that.
and that's our standard practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the surplus begins to materialize, start by going back to the list of capital items that were cut. If available, work down to the list of items that are in surplus, but also we regroup cross-functionally because in the interim, other things can break and
Pop up.
come up and
Yeah.
it could change, but
But
it's definitely noted by everybody,
in order for us to do any of that, it's got to go through the council first anyways.
everything surplus.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think if
Just-
you want to direct,
Well, direction,
make
I'm
your
fine, I'm fine with,
suggestions
I'm
to
fine with
to
that,
someone,
but
it's got to start with the council vote.
that's
or
fine. I just
comes
want
out anyway.
our understanding directionally, that's what we'd like to see happen. If we're getting nods of heads, then I'm fine.
Well,
I
more
understand.
discussion too, I think.
Okay,
Absolutely.
So Jerry, the number would be the one that's highlighted, 50 million.
Yeah. 082, 625. I'm going to go ahead, so. Move to send the general government budget of 50,082,625 to the annual budget hearing.
For a second,
second,
all in favor?
Aye.
I,
I voted no on everything else. I can't change that.
That's okay. That's okay.
The
Figure
the
that's what it
water
was.
control budget,
I don't have that
yeah,
number.
that's $5,693,282.
282.
And that was voted perfectly by the Berlin Water Control Commission.
Okay. I thought in the past, we also did a vote on the revenue budgets,
The revenue would just be the combination of the other two.
the other two.
The Board of Ed, so the 137, 696. Because revenue, it has to be balanced by statute.
Okay, so we don't have to take an action on,
No, you
The
took an
100.
action on the individual revenue piece.
Okay.
You wanted To do total.
okay, move to send Berlin Water Control budget of $5,693,282 to the annual budget hearing.
For a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So, just want to make one final comment. I appreciate the, cooperation amongst our team to try to, make it work. I mean, I know there's some challenges with the reval, but I understand the house appraisals, values went up and so forth, but, after working together, I believe that, we were presenting a reasonable fiscal responsible budget that, still doesn't take away the quality of, what's required, the quality of services both on the education side and the town side. I think the mayor would like to say a few words, if that's okay. Okay. Okay, well, there was an article in the Hartford Current this past weekend with respect to the town of West Hartford doing a kind of a phased mill rate approach,
grand list.
ground list approach that they use 25% of a prior year mill rate before the reval and 75% of the new reval rate, and kind of combine, came up with a composite type rate to reduce the level of impact on the reval. And I don't know exactly, how that all works out.
So can I interject?
Yes.
What they did was they took 2021 whatever your house was assessed at, and they took 25% of that, 25% of the 70%, you know, that they use for taxes. Then they took the new assessment and they took 75% of that. They combined them together and they summed all those up across everything, and that became their new assessment for that year. And then they based their mill rate on that, okay, and taxed at that rate. And then the next year, or a couple years later, they went to the full brand new assessment. And supposedly that was okay from a state statute perspective. So it tended to move the shift from commercial to residential to be a little slower. And it moved the shift from where it was in there's this last year, so 2021 to 2022, like that chart we had up before, it kind of moves it and smooths it back towards the left a little bit.
Well, they had no choice, to be honest with you. From living there, there's 3 West Hartfords. There's West Hartford next to Hartford, where a small house is, you pay through the nose. Then you have the Blue Black Square area. Then you have the West Hartford we all think about, and they had to, because if not, the area of West Hartford by Hartford would suffer immensely. So they had no choice.
I'm just, one of the questions was,
Yeah.
is that something you guys are aware of is even doable? I'm not saying we should do it, but
Yes, I'm aware of it. Unfortunately, the assessor's not here tonight. We did have a discussion. He and I had a discussion because I do know there are a couple of other communities that did also discuss and elect not to go in that direction, but they also discussed it. I don't want to put words in his mouth, so we can certainly, as this process moves along, because it isn't final. As you know, when the budget's adopted, you then come back and establish the mill rate at that point, so you can incorporate at that point if you wanted to. I do know that he expressed concerns, and many others had expressed concerns, that what ends up happening is you in some respects give taxpayers almost the feeling that the reval never ended. You're working it in, because remember, we're just publishing this, but reval has been going on for about 1.5 years. People have been having homes inspected, having all that occur. So if you delay it for 2 more years, you would effectively this time next year for the FY25 budget. And then you're sitting there in FY27, which means in 26, you're starting the reval. And what ends up typically happening is you create a situation where people are like, you're constantly revaluing my home, when in reality, it's the math. There may be other reasons, but I know he and I had that discussion as well. But there are legal ways. I mean, we'd certainly want to avail ourselves of legal counsel, make sure we do it appropriately if that's what you want to do. But that was the initial response that I received as far as, and what I heard from a couple of other communities who elected not to do it.
my take on it is it's confusing. It would be extremely confusing to people. And I personally don't think that the 25-75 split they use is really going to make that much difference. So I kind of said it would be pretty onerous to implement and for not a real lot of value.
Not in this town, absolutely not.
I think with the reval you had, that's the key.
Right.
Your reval was how it looks though. No, it's not too late to do it. No. You're printing out. No, yeah. Gonna put this down if you guys are good. I just wanted to share with you what your mill rate change would be based on what you're bringing forward. It would be a 30.02 mil and 0.86 increase.
Would be the 0.86 mill rate increase.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's worth looking at. I don't know, to me, West Hartford is a pretty sophisticated community and sort of triple the size of us, so. If they were able to pull it off, I don't see why we wouldn't. You're spreading the burden of the revaluation over a couple of years, which would help folks, because we know no matter how much we look at the budget, reval is still hitting different homes differently. Some are getting hit over 20%. You're not changing really commercial any. I don't know why we wouldn't look at that and consider that and maybe get some figures on it, get some more information. What's the drop dead date, Kevin, so the tax bills come out, right? When would we have to?
Well, we have to set the mill rate after the
Yeah,
budget here.
But then you could reset it, right? later? Is that?
I'm not sure what legally has to be
Yeah.
done, because I'm sure that would have to be. OPM reviews the reval to make sure that it's been fair. So I don't know if there's requirements to get state approval for that. I just don't know. Joe is not here this week, so, but when he gets back, we could talk. He was very familiar with that.
Oh, okay,
having been
good.
An assessor for many, many
Sure.
years. Um,
Is this a council decision or a Board of Finance decision?
I don't know that
I
answer.
mean,
Yeah.
until you know that, I mean, it's, well, why talk about it?
Yeah, truly don't know.
Well, I mean, as long as it's not too late, if they pass this budget, it doesn't matter because obviously we can
Yeah, I
phase that in after, or we don't know.
I don't believe it is too late. I'm not 100% certain, but I don't believe it is. But just so anybody is even online or anything, you're only sending this to the annual budget hearing.
Right.
Nothing has been sent to council, nothing's been sent to voters.
Mhm.
This is just stage one, an important stage, but it's the first stage. There are other opportunities to address the budget, so
Yeah,
you
that's
can
what
do that.
You know, I think one of the other points, when you do something like that about the 25-75, you're basically giving most of the benefit to those that are in the higher percentage increase categories.
Right.
So does that fall into your bigger houses, or does that fall into, you know, I don't know what the demographics of that is, but certainly you're helping out the people who had the biggest, you know, in our chart, the last couple groupings of the 30%, the 25%, 20%. So as long as that's the group of people you're intending to help, then fine,
Yeah, I
but
think you just say it's the bigger houses.
no, I'm saying I don't know what it is.
Well,
Actually, from the houses I looked at, the tax comparison year to year, it wasn't, the houses that got hit the worst, 30% plus were in the $300,000 to $400,000 range.
Mhm.
The most popular at the time of,
And the most rare property, much like our town manager lives in, got hit with what percentage? 60%,
Some of the cheapest properties got hit the hardest.
60% increase on their
Crazy
property
numbers.
tax.
Interesting.
I would say that's pretty severe
That's interesting.
for
Yeah.
a smaller.
Mhm.
So what would be the impact financially for the town itself if we do that 25-75 split? In terms of
Just mixes
tax
it.
revenue?
The grand list has no actual impact on it. The grand list and everybody's share is really their proportional burden of the budget. The only way to actually have a financial impact is to change the budget. If the grand list is $1 billion and you have $1 million, you get that percentage of the budget is really your impact. That's really what we're doing in reval, is trying to basically restate properties so that they are representative of today, so that as you bring the budget forward, it's being borne by those with more appropriate values, not necessarily higher or lower, just more relevant values. For years, the state went with 10 years between revals and found that often there were wild swings. So they switched several years ago to a 5-year reval to try to keep the property values as consistent as possible, so they're more representative of where values currently sit. But really, all you're doing with the grand list and the valuation, determining proportional share of the budget that's adopted.
So the other implication is somewhere in this curve of, or this band of people, whatever, there's a crossover point too. Because if you're going to lower the total assessed value on our budget, the mill rate's got to go up.
Yep,
Okay,
exactly.
there's a crossover point where some are still gonna pay, you know, they were gonna pay a little bit less and now they're gonna pay a little bit more because you've done that. So you really got to understand that whole spectrum and
You
what
gotta
you're
take
really
the hit,
doing
you
in
have to
there,
call. Yeah,
right? Because the mill rate's gotta be higher than what we're setting it at right now.
You're also affecting the other two pieces. We talk a lot about the real estate, and we should, because it's the biggest chunk of it.
Mhm.
But your mill rate, unless something goes haywire, we're gonna be below the motor vehicle cap for the state. So that mill rate increase that you do will affect every person's motor vehicle taxes, including those who are helped and hurt by that change, as well as all the businesses and their personal property. Now, those are obviously two smaller pieces of the budget, but they would be impacted by paying more if your mill rate went up.
Do you recall which towns looked at it and decided not to do it?
I don't, I'd have to go back and look. Joe and I talked about it very early on. Because this is a situation that is playing across the state. I just read an article in the Journal Inquirer a week ago with the outgoing town manager for Glastonbury describing exactly the same situation, that about 90% of the properties would see a tax increase, pretty much whatever they did with the budget. It's probably not too comfortable for folks who are reaching into the bank account, but it is a compliment to the town. I mean, for years that I've been here, properties have moved very quickly. It's a popular town. It's a desirable community, and it's indicative of the speed with which properties move. And frankly, right now, the lack of properties on the market because people want to be here. So it's a compliment. It doesn't really offset a lot when you're paying a little bit more money, but it is indicative of a desirable community. So
It's
that
all
is something.
good. It's all a victim of our own success, which is great, until the tax bill comes.
Yeah.
And then some folks are gonna be, you know,
Yeah.
burdened by it. And particularly I'm worried about our seniors. They're on fixed incomes. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, but
I mean, folks that are, and our young families too. They may have stretched to buy their home and now you're adding, I don't know, $300, $400, $500 to their tax bill.
Keep in
No
mind,
matter what we do with the budget.
so keep in mind
Yeah.
that the grand list isn't going to change.
No, I get that.
That's
yeah,
that's
Right.
spelling out who's going to pay
Exactly.
the budget.
The value is gonna
It's
stay
gotta
the
be-
same.
exactly.
There's got to be a reason why West Hartford did it, and I'm just curious to hear, you know, whether we do it or not. I don't know either, obviously, but I think it's worth looking at
We will.
and
Absolutely.
and see what they saw in it, where they moved to do it for a population of 60,000, you know, people. I mean, we're 20,000. It wouldn't be as much of a burden for us. We certainly have less properties, and so I'm just thinking it's worth looking at.
We absolutely will. When Joe's back,
See
we
what
absolutely will.
it does, if it helps folks. I mean, I agree, George, there's probably a point that, well, we don't know where that is.
I agree. We
Yeah,
don't
we
know.
don't know. I don't think we know enough about it. To your point, I agree, Kevin, absolutely, but I think it's important to see if it makes sense.
And we'll have the assessor,
See how it works.
yeah, we'll have the assessor
Yeah.
look at it and also.
Yeah, absolutely.
assessor and
Look at
assessor
Joe
and
and, no,
understand.
I just want to look at it as an option. I don't know if it's the best option either, but I don't think any of us are
That's fair.
standing here
Do that.
now. but
Absolutely.
yeah. If it is, it is. If it isn't, we don't do it.
Just
Right.
West Hartford,
But then it's.
I grew up there.
Yeah,
till you
yeah.
do it
Okay.
every
Two
project.
things. One, everybody's on fixed income. I got kids, I'm on a fixed income.
Well, of course,
West Hartford, if you look at the Elmwood area
yes.
by Hartford, where I grew up, by the way, it's completely different West Hartford than the West Hartford went towards the Avon Mountain and stuff like that. So the disparity had to happen. So if you're gonna tax those guys in the Elmwood area at the same rate, those big houses, they can't afford. Those people would have to either sell their houses or declare bankruptcy. West Hartford recognized it and they acted on it. I don't think we have that issue here, but I agree. There's no harm in looking at it. There's no harm in looking at it. I agree.
I'll say take a look at it.
Yeah.
You know, a serious look at it. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't affect people, or if it's
Yeah.
disproportionately affecting somebody different. Of course, we're not gonna do it, but we're trying to make it as fair. And again, I am concerned about fixed income. Yeah, you're on a fixed income, but you're still working a job. People that are on social security benefits are.
I gotta worry about college for
Huh?
my kids. Will be
Oh, I hear ya.
$1,000 a year in a few years. So
Oh, I know.
fixed income all the way.
We're all worried about everything, the way the banks are going. Maybe there will be no banks tomorrow, so we won't have to worry about anything.
It's okay. UBS will just come in and save all the banks.
Yeah.
Actually gonna go up
Right.
because they're gonna bail them all out. Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Right, so,
Thank you.
okay, so, I think we're done. I thank everyone who showed up tonight, just to get a little more flavor of our budget process. And those people on Zoom, and so, may I have a motion to adjourn? Make a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor?
Bye.
Thank you.